Okay, so welcome again, everybody. My name is Monique Henry-Hudson, and I'm going to be leading this Cafecito chat with Camille. And I know I just said your name, but can you still share your name, your title, and what's a Nickelodeon character that you resonate the most with?
Yes, hi, it's nice to be here. So glad to be a part of this. My name is Camille Eden, and I am the Vice President of Recruitment, Talent Development, and Outreach at Nickelodeon Animation Studio.
And the character that you resonate the
The
most with.
character, I think the character that I resonate with the most, it's actually fitting for this festival, which is Abuela, because when I grew up, my grandmother, she was part, the grandparents took care of us too. So what I love about Abuela, it does remind me of my grandmother. We called her Mummy. And you couldn't get anything past her. You thought you were slick, but she would catch everything. So I love watching Abuela, and it makes me feel like that universal love for our abuelas. So
I'm gonna have to look out for it. I haven't gotten a chance to check out all that's happening during this event. So I love hearing that. And I'll just share, I know this is not about me, but just share a little bit that I'm a production coordinator I'm over at Netflix. And I'm just so happy Latinx in animation has tapped on me a couple times for different things. So I'm so happy again to be here. And I'd want to share that the Nickelodeon character that I guess resonates the most with me is Chucky from Rugrats, because I'm a big scaredy cat. Like if it has a lot of suspense, gore, like it doesn't even, I realized like 2 weeks ago, I jumped watching like the Halloween episode of Bob's Burgers. And I was like, girl, you have to get it together. Like it's Bob's Burgers. So yeah, can you just tell also a little bit of like where your family is from?
yeah, absolutely. I actually was born and raised in the Bay Area. I was born in San Francisco, so I'm actually a San Francisco native. Me and my sister were born there. My mother, she immigrated from Central America. She was born in Honduras. And my grandmother is from Honduras. My grandfather was from Belize. And she came to the States with my older brother and sister. When they came to this country, they didn't speak English. And when they went to school, they lost a lot of the Spanish. But and my father is Creole, so we have quite a lot of different blood running through our family. But we in my home growing up, you had English and you had Spanish. So when my mother would speak with, her sisters, her brother, it would go between Spanish and English. And growing up, I just thought that's how everybody was, but they weren't.
Yeah, no, I understand that too.
Yeah.
And are you yourself fluent in Spanish?
I would say I can definitely understand. So you can't, don't try to have a conversation around me and think I won't understand you. Um, but I've spoken English pretty much my whole life. I think when I go into the culture, I can, it comes back, but I speak pretty slow. So
I completely feel you on that one. Kind of likewise, my mom didn't really speak Spanish in the home unless she was talking to family. And I'm from New York, and at the time, which is really weird in itself, but it was like if you spoke anything other than English, they would like put you in remedial classes. So my mom was very adamant, like, she needs to just be good at English. So where was I going with that? I was just saying like I could relate. And it's also actually, this was it, worth noting that whether you speak the language fluently or you just understand more than you speak and stuff like that, that doesn't make you any less Latinx. You're still a part of the community and
yeah,
the culture.
I think that's a hard part about this conversation too. And I'm so glad we're bringing this forward is that, it was almost a shame that you spoke Spanish. And I think, that's probably one of the reasons why, same thing in our household was that we're here in America, we should speak English. So same thing, like my mother would speak Spanish to my aunts and uncles, but that's, we would be listening in, going like, what'd she say? Oh, she said, so and so is with who, so we that was like a way for us to kind of eavesdrop, even though they didn't think we could pick up on the words. But there was almost like a shame in that, which is very sad to me, because it's almost denying a whole half of your culture.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, when you go into school, it's like you have to speak English. And I think that's probably why, I didn't ever, talk about being of Latin descent in school. And then my brother and sister, they dropped the Spanish when they were in school because of that shame of being other, which
Yeah.
is, it's heartbreaking.
Yeah. So to pivot a little bit, how did you get into the animation industry? Like, can you tell, I don't know, depending on how much you feel like talking, we're all definitely, down to listen. But what was your journey? Did you go to school for it? Did you just fall into it?
I went to school actually. So again, being in a family, my mother grew up in a developing country. So when she came to America, she was like, you need security, you need a job. When I was little, I was drawing all over everything. My older sister, she's a painter and she went to art school. But my mom, in her eyes, that was not a viable career for making money and being a success. It was like, be a doctor, be a lawyer, be a business person. And we didn't know, like, what's a business person? You just do business, right? Like it was just like, do business. So, I was drawing all over everything. I was, she kept buying me pads because I would draw on the walls and the tablecloth. And I loved art, like anything artistic and creative. I was just there, right? And I wanted to go to school. I wanted to go to be an illustrator for fashion. And I remember, I was drawing and putting my portfolio together. And my mom, she took me down to the Fashion Institute. And, they looked at my portfolio and they were like, this is great. And it's going to cost you a big chunk of money, which we didn't have. So, she was like, we don't have this kind of money. So, you're going to go to school, you're going to go to a JC, which I did. I went to a JC to get the undergrad. And then when I transferred to San Francisco State, I had this class that covered art and film and theater, and it kind of brought an animation. That was the first place I had a even glimpse of animation, because it brought it all together. And that class opened my eyes to quite a lot. It
Wow.
opened my eyes that art and film, they go together, right? And that just blew my mind, that you could do art and you could be an art director, or you could do all these different things in this crazy medium called film, and animation too. But the problem was there weren't a lot of opportunities in the Bay Area at that time. And so the first job that I got out of school was at Industrial Light and Magic, which was a visual effects. That was George Lucas's effects house in the Bay Area. And the first job I actually got wasn't in production. It was working in the security department.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I was a coordinator for the security department for a year, and I did that job. But while I did that job, I was like watching everything and meeting everybody and asking a lot of questions and, just getting to know everyone. And then one of the producers on one of the shows, I reached out, and her name happened to be Camille. She's an amazing woman. She was like, I'll hire you as a production assistant. So I was a coordinator for the security department at the time. And I took that job as a PA. I started as a PA, in my probably like mid 20s, and started over as a PA. And I got into production that way. And then through that visual effects process, I learned more and more about film and animation. And I ended up producing a short film there from one of the artists, my then boyfriend, who became my husband.
Oh,
He did a
snap.
short film. Yeah. And then I ended up producing that. And then that short took us to Montreal, where I line produced a TV series. So it was just like step
Nice.
into all these different things. So I was in production first, but I had all this background of doing live action and visual effects, then into animation, then into CG animation. And that's how my career into this industry really started. So it's like and back then they didn't have any we didn't have a Latinx, or we didn't have pathways in like you do now. We didn't even have internet back then. So that's dating me, but
Yeah. Can you speak a little bit to having to start over? Like, did you take a pay cut when you did the PA position? And did you feel any type of way about having to start over essentially?
yeah, you had to take a pay cut because, but at that time it wasn't that big of a pay cut, but I was like, I really want to do this. And I was super passionate about it. So it was almost like you figure it out, it's like I'm going to budget and I'm going to do all these things to figure this out. And you're working a lot of hours too in production, so that overtime helped make up the difference.
Yeah.
But I worked my tail off, and then I got promoted. I was a coordinator and then senior coordinator. They didn't have PMs back then, but I worked really hard, and just really, I loved it. I fell in love with it, and it was so exciting and fast paced, and every day was a new day. And it's been like that literally since I started. It's every single day has been a learning opportunity for me.
That just makes me feel good because I also, like I said, work in production management, and I know sometimes it may seem like it's not glorious, or like you don't really get like rewarded and all that sort of stuff, but it's a part of the industry or the process that it's really fulfilling to me.
Yeah.
So now you're in a department that's very important to the animation industry and to studios and stuff, and it's something that I would say is like an oversight, really, as a pathway into the entertainment industry, and just the fact that it exists. What was it like for you pivoting into recruiting?
Yeah, I never thought about recruiting as a career. As I said before, I loved my job. I loved what I did. What I started to realize, it allowed me to meet all these different amazing artists, and I got to live in Montreal for a year. After that, I lived in LA for a year, and I was freelancing and doing all these freelance jobs at different studios. And I actually was at Nick on a short project then. I think I've worked at a lot of the bigger studios. But at one point I decided that I didn't necessarily want to produce. I didn't want to be a animation producer or a visual effects producer, but I wanted to stay in the industry and still work with the talent because I loved that part of the job. And yes, it took me away from drawing and designing, but I found this passion, and I didn't know what opportunities were open to me. So I applied for a job, and this was at Sony at the time. It was a crewing manager job. I didn't get it. But they remembered me, and they said, well, we have this other job as a recruiter. Would you be interested in recruiting for us? And I was like, I don't know anything about recruitment. I don't know HR. I like the artists. And they're like, we think you'd be great at it because you have all this experience of working on the other side. Like you work with the artists, you speak the language, the pipelines, all of this. So have you thought about it? And my boyfriend was like, just try it. You can always go back to production.
Sure.
So I did. I tried it. It was horrible the first 3 weeks. It was I'm not like I probably told this story before, but I was certain I was going to get fired. But the interesting thing is that production training that I learned all those years, the moment I kind of paused, I kept trying to fit into this what I thought a recruiter was. But when I stopped, I paused, and I thought about what recruiting is and flipped it. When you're in production, you're working with the artists inside, right? You're supporting the shows. You've got timelines and schedules and deadlines. So once I flipped my thinking to think like, okay, flip that to outside. Now, how would you get these people in? And what is it that you would do to help them get in? Once my brain switched to that kind of thinking, then it was like, let's go. It really changed the dynamic of how I recruited, because it allowed me to really like use those skills and everything that I learned in production, but now apply it to get people into those jobs that I would have supported on the other side, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. Can I also ask you, in working with HR and recruitment, do you do you help facilitate retention by any chance, or can you just speak about that? Because I know when I was interviewing probably like two years ago for some places, that became a question that I was starting to ask. Like, well, what is the retention like for like millennials? And I was thinking I didn't ask, but also just like women, because what I learned, well, what I got clearer about last summer was that a lot of people, a lot of millennials, a lot of women of color leave the animation industry.
Mhm.
So it would be pretty interesting to hear from like a recruiting HR person about that retention aspect.
Yeah, I think the world of animation and visual effects and production, when I started, it wasn't so much thinking about retention. Yes, it's not to say that studios weren't thinking about that, but you're in this super fast-paced environment that's project-based, right? Project to project to project. So I think the thinking around retention, and especially inclusive hiring, it has evolved, which it needed to do. I don't think earlier on a lot of studios were thinking about retention and growth opportunities like they are now, because you
Mhm.
just, when you're in that environment, it's get it done, get people in, get them done, it's like a machine.
Yeah.
Um, but the reason I think, there's been a lot of thought and a lot of thinking about how do we make this industry more, have more growth opportunities and bring in new talent and bring in people of color. And that was something that, in addition, that I started to see along the way, because at first it was just super exciting to be a part of it, right? But then once you get settled in and you look around you and you realize, like, I'm the only person in the room that looks like me. I'm the
Mhm.
only person in the room that I can relate to. I'm the only, and that was something that I'll be honest and say came a little bit later as I was recruiting. And I would go out there, to your point, I would see a lot of people studying in school, but they didn't, where were they, right? Where are they? And then in the studios, when I saw someone who looked like me, they usually weren't there for very long.
Mhm.
And I started to ask that question, why are people, where'd they go? And especially if I saw a woman of color, of any color, I was like, well, where'd she go? She was here and now she's gone. So I started to ask myself that question as I was more involved with recruitment. And I started to learn about the organizations out there, and little by little I started to work on what are we doing inside, not just outside, because there were all these, what I saw was there were a lot of organizations outside to help people get in, but
Mhm.
then it was like, well, what's happening inside to keep people in, right? um, so it's evolving, it's growing, but I think we're headed in the right direction, because again, for me, coming out and speaking on in panels and conferences like this, it's shining a light, and hopefully the people watching this are some of the people who are making those decisions around retention, right? Growth, development within their studios.
So I
I
want
know
to
it.
ask you, sorry, no, finish your sentence. Yeah.
Oh no, I was just going to say, at Nickelodeon, we're definitely, that's part of the plan. It's not just get people in the door, because I can hire till the cows come home, right? I can bring people in, but if I bring them in and they don't feel welcome in that environment, then they're not going to stay.
Mhm.
So you have to work at it from both angles. You have to work on the outside, you have to work on programs to bring people in, you have to work in the language to bring people in, but you have to work on the inside environment and culture to be a place where people can grow and nourish and feel like they have a space at the table.
Yeah, so I just wanted to ask you to further elaborate as to why your presence is so critical and significant to being in HR and the HR, world and sector.
Yeah. Um, I think that um, representation is everything. I think that for me to be able to come out and tell my story of how I can only speak for me, right? I can't speak for everybody. I can only speak for my experience, but I can't even imagine if I was a little brown girl who saw someone who looked like me doing this job, what that would have meant
Right.
at that time. So if I go out, or if I, if we're doing a talk somewhere, and if I know that I can bring people out from my company, or if I go out and speak and I know, like, I can't see you, but I hope I can reach you, that means so much. And I think that's that piece of, the outreach part of recruitment. It may not be me, but it might be somebody else who might have a similar experience or look like you, right? Or have something about your culture, your background that you can relate to, and you can see us in these roles and know that, we're here to, help you feel welcome. I think, that's how we do it. And I think it's important and it's critical, but I think as well, it goes deeper than just bringing people in. Again, it's about creating content too.
Yeah.
That's a whole other conversation, is creating content around, all these different faces that make up our country and all these different cultures, and making sure that they're authentic, and making sure that
Right.
those people are part of that storytelling, and that's how we make people feel welcome, and right, by telling the stories that represent the makeup of this country.
Absolutely. And further breaking it down, like, just because people have certain races, that doesn't mean that they all have the same cultural experience. So I know we're making progress, but I'm like, this is what I want still.
Yeah.
So yeah, so we're hearing that the industry is saying that they want more diverse talent, but what should candidates as well as hiring managers and departments be aware of when they're responding to this call or making these requests about, we need more diversity?
Yeah. Yeah. I think, what does that mean? What does diversity mean? It's like, a lot of people will go straight to ethnicity and gender, which is very important. We need more women in this industry. We need more BIPOC talent in this industry, not just working in the artistic roles, but creating and writing, right? And in management and executives and leading studios. We need that, and we need that growth. And I think that, each show or each studio or each department needs to define what that means for them, right? And I think what I was saying before, it's like, look at the makeup of our country, look at the makeup of our world, not just America, but look at the makeup of our world. And the majority of this world are other cultures and other people. It's not just about culture too, as I said, it's age, it's ability, it's disability, it's hearing, it's deaf, it's right. There's so much, there's so many stories, and diversity is the differences, but we are one people, right? And I think that we need to make sure that we're not just telling one story, because even between us, we look a certain way, and people will make that judgment, like, oh, that's a Black one, but there's all these layers underneath, right? And you can't, the saying is, you can't judge a book by its cover. And I think, we really, this industry, we really have to, you know each organization needs to define what they need to do to move that needle and make that change. But we need to keep taking those steps towards making that change.
Yeah, and no, that's fine. So we both, I'm going to assume, right, you identify as an Afro-Latina, this nice new term, relatively new term. I love it. It's made me feel like inclusive within the culture. So we are at this intersection of being Black and Latina. How do you navigate this space, and what do you wish people understood, or more people understood about it?
Yeah, I again, as I said it before we talk, I'm so excited about this conversation with you, because you and I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but you've never really felt fully in one or the other. It's really, you look at me and you would just say Black or African American, but it was a whole other side to my family and my culture and what we eat, and the music that we listen to. And there's so many, just like any family, there's different shades, right? um I think that it, I hate more than anything those boxes that you have to check.
Oh yeah.
I hate those boxes because it's like, non-Hispanic, and then you have African, like, I don't fit in those boxes,
Yeah.
and I was just filling out a form for my daughter the other day, and I laughed and I was like, pick one. Just pick one, she was laughing. She's only 14, but we joke about it, but it's sad. It's not a joke. And we have to be defined by this box or this box.
Hmm.
And those are our choices. But it's like, no, this is not a box. There's so much more going on than that. So I think that I, growing up, it was difficult and it was challenging because, I was never fully accepted as being Latina. And I was always looked at like, well, who does she think she is? She's not Black enough. She's not this enough. She's not, right. The term I actually, before I heard Afro-Latin, I'd say Latina,
Yeah, I like that one too.
but it's um I at another studio I worked at, we had a focus group for a film, and it was about the Latin culture. And initially I was really hesitant to step forward and share my experiences because I was like, they're not going to accept me, I'm not going to be welcome at that table. But they did, and it was
Nice.
great. And I think, it's again about looking deeper into what's under the surface and not just checking one box.
Yeah. So for me, like I said, I'm from New York. So in terms of like Latin, Hispanic, Spanish people, it's Puerto Ricans and Dominicans are the browner ones, and everybody else is Mexican, Colombian, Ecuadorian, and whatever. So for me, my mother's father's side is from Venezuela. So it was very difficult to like claim that identity because there was like, you can't, like, you don't look like you can be from there. So like sometime in high school, I was just like, I'm not even like, unless someone like asks, then I'm just Black American and like Trinidadian. But as you were saying, I always did feel like I wasn't enough of anything. Like I'm not West Indian enough, I'm not Black American enough, I'm not Spanish enough. And I'm just like, I'm just a girl that likes cartoons. Like, can't I just be her? But in college, as with the natural hair movement, I feel like that's when I was starting to see more of this the Afro-Latin identity coming up along with that, and with people embracing their natural hair texture and more kinkier stuff. And then with the internet and social media, I was starting to, feel more comfortable being like, okay, well, this is also me. Like, I don't have to closet this identity. And then it's been nice to see within the last couple years of more inclusivity with having Afro-Latin people a part of these discussions of being like Latin in the animation industry as well, because I also felt like those conversations always looked a certain way, which was
Mhm.
no different than like a women's panel being only one race of women, essentially.
Yes.
So I I understand too that people struggle with race, ethnicity, and like nationality, but I feel like if people could just really try and take their time in understanding that, they would understand how you can be Black and from like Central and South America at the same time. But
Yes.
just like ease into it, like it just take your time.
Yes. And we come in all shades, we come in all shades. In my family, we have people who are light, light, light with blonde hair and green eyes, and we have people who are dark, dark, dark,
Yeah.
but we all have a common culture. And I agree, it's like take another moment and really, dig in. And when you represent a character on screen, it's not just that latte brown or cafe au lait, there's all these different, and it's not just one hair texture or tone. And put the research in.
Yeah. Like, I mean, honestly. So on that note, right, society has a very distinguished idea or representation, Hollywood, let's just say animation industry too, of what Latinos or Latinx people look like. So how and do you push back against that? And I don't know, what are some ways that you think that people could become more informed?
Again, I think I would go back to making sure that you have that representation in the room with the shows, when they're being created, making sure that somebody, or it doesn't have to be one somebody, it could be multiple people from various cultures come together and can tell those stories. Or in your writer's room, if you're telling the story around specifically like Latin culture, make sure that people from the background are part of the process, right? I think that is key and important. And if you don't, you have to bring in consultants, bring in people, but hire people onto the show and let them have a voice.
Yeah.
Let them have a voice of what their experiences are like, and take notes, so that you can ring true. Because we don't want to go, we've had stereotypes since the dawn of cinema. Like, it's time to break those stereotypes.
Yep.
And the other thing, the beauty of it is, with having people hearing their voices, it's going to make the story so much richer and so much more, like when I hear about your background, I'm like, ooh, tell me more, like,
Yeah.
what did you eat? What did you do? What did you listen? Like your family, it must be, my family, I thought everybody had for Thanksgiving turkey and, and then we have arroz con pollo, and we would have tortillas, and my aunt would bring tamales. And so I thought everybody's Thanksgiving was like that. And imagine how much richer it could be if you could dive, like we were talking earlier, like if you could dive a little bit deeper in. But bringing those voices into the creative process is key.
Yeah, for me, some of the nuances is what I realized when I was like in elementary school is like the cleaning products. Like my mom went to like, like the bodega and got cleaning products. So I didn't have what the other house was. And I was like, why is everybody like not knowing what I'm talking about? Like I was born here in Queens. Like I'm feeling like a foreigner. So yeah, having people that are a part of all these different cultures, a part of the process would just, further help to make these stories more authentic.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that. I just, you made me think of something, because my mother, when we were growing up, she would go to the mission. Back then, the mission was completely Hispanic. It was like, and the bodega on the East Coast would be the mercado in the West Coast.
Oh, okay.
So we'd go in there, and this happened every time. Like, she would walk in for all her products from home, and the guy behind the counter would just be like, "What's she doing in here?" And then as soon as she opened her mouth, he'd be like, "Oh, señora,"
Yeah.
She would just like fire it off, and his mouth would be on the floor, And we would crack up. Me and my sister would be like, "Here it comes," And even from within, it's like, people would judge you from, like how you look, but you don't know.
I love those moments too, when my mom would just start doing her thing, and I'm like, yes, that's my mom. Have you ever seen the movie Chico and Rita? Just
No.
go off. Okay.
So, oh wait, yes I have.
Okay, I was about to say you have to. It's like,
yeah,
I fangirl about it all the time. And if there's anybody watching that hasn't, you should definitely check it out, because it's about Afro-Cuban musicians, essentially. Yeah. And for me, this is like before Spider-Verse, and I'm just like, what? Like Afro, Latin people on the screen, and it's telling the story. The soundtrack is so beautiful, it's a really great story. Yeah. So, and then when Spider-Verse came along, I felt like, yeah, it's like, we're getting more, and I'm just waiting now for and I'm not waiting necessarily for the big studios to do this, but I'm waiting to start seeing more like West Indian now representation. Like we have a couple Black Americans here in the animation characters representation, but I want to see my whole identity, on the screen, all the little, subgroups.
Yeah. So I think it's happening. I think it's happening. And I think
and it's going to take a while. It's the animation industry. So it's not like they could, shoot and then the movie's out next year. It's going to be 3-4 years.
Yeah. It's okay though. It's as long as we start it. And I think, this again, like I said, it's happening and there's more coming. And, and I will say, for Spider-Verse, just I had a chance to meet Peter Ramsey, and I was almost in tears when I was telling him how much that meant to see Miles Morales, and just the experience. And then for my daughter to see that character, and I can't even tell you how many, like if it was a VHS tape, she would have worn it out by now, because just how many times she's watched it. She's you, yeah.
We are the same.
Yeah, but even me, I watch it and I love that. I love that because that's exactly it. It's like,
yeah,
they really did some work on making sure to get those characters and the nuances. And it's like what you said before, those nuances that really, they make it.
Yeah, it can only happen if the people are part of the creative process.
Yes, absolutely.
So how can the animation industry continue to uplift the shared diversity that exists within the Latinx community?
I think, again, we touched on this, but bringing in those creators, bringing in those storytellers, bringing in those writers, bringing in executives, that's something that we're doing at Nickelodeon is Ramsey Naito, who's president of Nick, and Brian Robbins. They are changing the game at Nick Studios, and they're, creating this environment for making sure that when we are telling these stories and when we're bringing in the people who make them, that we represent. On the other side, it's, this is why it's beautiful to have these organizations like Latinx, like Women in Animation, like Rise Up Animation, like Black and Animated, helping to bring this talent forward. And then in the middle, it's the studios and the shows and the hiring managers and the producers being open to hiring people for their potential, because there's a lot of potential out there. And I don't like the word take a risk. You're not taking a risk on anything. You're not taking a risk. You're hiring these people because these ones are going to be the future stars, the future storytellers, the future creators, right? Those future Peter Ramseys. You are not taking a risk on anything. So I think it's you can come in from the entry, you can be in the middle, and you can start from the top.
Yeah, that's leading me to wonder if you're able to speak to it, how challenging is it to further diversify more like leadership and upper management positions? Because from my eyes, it seems like kind of down here at the bottom, it's like, very colorful. But then once we start going towards the top, it gets more of like a monolith in appearances.
Yeah.
So so how challenging is it? And is it something that is just going to take time because people have to grow and become more seasoned up into those type of positions?
I think I think it's not impossible, right? It's I've been at places where I've tried to grow and wanted to grow, but because not having the opportunity to grow, or it was like I would be told you're not doing this right, or you're not doing that right, or you need to do this more. And then it's like, well, show me, teach me. I want to do this, but you have to, tell me what I need to do. It's, companies and studios creating programs and creating opportunities for growth, right? Mm-hmm. That is possible. And that is something that is achievable. And it's an easy fix. It's mentoring, you have people in those roles, mentor someone, to help get them the next step up, right? It can't, like I said, it's that middle piece that I think is key, because you can bring, like I said earlier, you can bring people in. If this middle piece isn't supportive, then those people that you brought in are going to leave. Mm-hmm. So you have to come at it from the top, from the entry, and work on the middle. And, again, sponsor somebody, mentor somebody, reach out to somebody, create an opportunity for that person in that mid-level role to step up and rise up. I think that's how we do it.
Love it. So we are winding down right now, but my final question is, maybe it's two pieces of advice. So one piece of advice for people that are trying to break into and getting started, then another set of advice for people that's trying to advance, like they're already in the industry, they're just maybe plateauing a little bit?
Yeah. I think what's amazing about right now is that, again, I mentioned there's so many opportunities and resources. I didn't have any of this. Like, again, there was no Rise Up, there was no Latinx, there was no internet, later, but I'm not that old, um, but take advantage of all of this. Take advantage of this. If you're attending this, if you're watching this, you have a resource right here in Latinx and animation. That's for entry level, right? If you're coming in, there's so much that's being offered right now. The one thing about this pandemic that it has done is created all of these opportunities for connection that weren't there before, right? It's an amazing time to get into this industry and to learn and to grow and to, reach out and connect with people, because, we wouldn't have been able to reach the number of people that we are able to, because now, like, look, you're on the East Coast, I'm on the West Coast. We probably wouldn't have been having this conversation if this would have been in person, right?
Not at all.
Exactly. And we're going to be reaching out to, I don't know how many people we're going to be able to connect with. So that's for the entry. Like, take advantage of the resources that you have at your fingertips. Make connections and network with the people that you meet in these opportunities and online. And I think you said for the mid-level, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for the mid-level, the same thing, actually. But if you're already working in the industry, look for people who can mentor you. Ask about, can you get a mentor? Look for people who would sponsor you in your company. If you are a high potential, find that person that can sponsor you. The mentor is the person who you go to and you ask for advice, and they can help you grow and learn. Your sponsor is your person who can speak for you when you're not in the room.
Oh, wow.
You can, reach out to people, do coffees with people, ask questions, tell people what it is that you want to do and how you want to grow, and ask the question of, what do I need to do to get there? How do I learn? How do I get to the next step? You have to say what you want, right? You have to say what you want and to grow. And then for the companies, create those opportunities for people to be able to learn and grow in those in those positions. It's I think a lot of companies now are creating mentor programs and shadowing programs. And there's everyone's looking outside for all this talent, but there's probably talent inside as well that's just sitting there wanting to grow and wanting these opportunities. So it's just shifting the way of thinking of how we grow talent.
Yeah, I feel like you were speaking to me.
I am.
I took it personally. I'm like, I'm
I
gonna
am.
remember this.
No, I hope, and I hope, this is for anybody who's listening, is ask for what you need, and don't be afraid to reach out. And you might find your mentor outside of your organization. That's okay. But if you want to grow within, try to find a sponsor within your network and your company.
Yeah, and you'll be surprised the people that just want to help others. Like, I've become even more vocal about the things I want to do, and just like, it's like almost like the universe sends you people, that just so happen that you're in alignment with and want to help you.
Yeah.
So,
and I wanted to add one more thing, is like,
sure.
When you get to that next step, and I say this often, is you reach back and you give back, and you help that next person in the door, right? And you reach back, and then you get that next step and you reach back and you make sure that person reaches back, and we pay it forward.
That's how you have to do it. Thank you so much, Camille, for your time. I'm so happy we got to connect. And I'm just going to throw this out there. I hope this is not the last time that you and I would be conversing. I really look forward to also seeing your journey and learning more about you as well. And thank you, Latinx Animation, for having us and allowing us to do this chat. And for everybody, just stay tuned and check out everything else that's happening.
Thank you. It was so nice. So nice to be here. So nice to meet you. And I'm sure it won't be the last time. So thank you so much.
Yes.